My name is Dan, and I just turned 28. I should have been celebrating my birthday surrounded by family, feeling grateful for another year of life, but instead I found myself staring at my phone calculator while my relatives laughed over dessert. The number on the screen showed my bank balance, $312. Rent was due in 5 days, and it was $850. Something inside me finally exploded after years of being the family's designated financial safety net, despite being the one who could barely keep his own head above water. They all knew my situation. They had to know. Yet here we were again with the same expectations, the same assumptions, the same crushing weight of responsibility that had been slowly suffocating me for the past 3 years. The worst part wasn't the money itself. It was the casual way they dismissed my struggles, as if earning in dollars automatically meant I was swimming in wealth. As if my American salary came with some magical multiplication factor that erased the cost of living, student loans, and the constant anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck in one of the most expensive cities in the country. Tonight, everything would change. I couldn't pretend anymore that I was okay with being everyone's financial backup plan while I skipped meals to make ends meet. Something had to give, and it wasn't going to be my sanity this time. If you've ever felt like you're drowning while everyone around you assumes you're floating, this story is for you. Hit subscribe because what happened next changed everything, not just for me, but for my entire family's understanding of what it means to truly support each other. The Rodriguez family had always been tight-knit, maybe too tight-knit. We lived in a small coastal town in Colombia where everyone knew everyone else's business, and family obligations weren't just expectations, they were sacred laws. My parents, Elena and Carlos, had built their lives around the idea that family comes first, always and without question. When I was 12, my father lost his job at the local factory. The economy was struggling, and opportunities were scarce. That's when the family narrative began to shift. I was the smart one, the one with potential, the one who could make it to America and change our family's trajectory forever. My younger sister Anna was artistic, but impractical, they said. My older brother Diego was reliable, but lacked ambition. I was the golden ticket. My parents sacrificed everything to send me to university in the United States. They sold my grandmother's jewelry, took out loans they couldn't afford, and worked double shifts for years. The pressure was enormous, but so was the love behind it. I understood the weight of their sacrifice, and I carried it with me every single day. The problem started when I graduated and got my first job. Everyone back home celebrated, as if I had won the lottery. They imagined American salaries as these massive numbers that could solve all our problems. They didn't understand that $2,500 a month in Miami was barely enough to cover rent, food, and basic expenses, let alone send money home regularly. But I tried. God, how I tried. I sent what I could, when I could, always feeling guilty that it wasn't more. I missed family gatherings because I couldn't afford plane tickets. I ate ramen for weeks to help pay for Anna's art supplies. I delayed medical appointments because the money I would have spent on healthcare went to Diego's car repairs instead. It started small, as these things always do. A $20 transfer here, $50 there for emergencies. My family's definition of emergency, however, was quite flexible. Anna needed new paints for her art project. Emergency. Diego's girlfriend's birthday was coming up, and he wanted to impress her. Emergency. My parents' television broke, and they wanted to replace it immediately rather than save up. Emergency. Each request came with a detailed explanation of why it was urgent, why it couldn't wait, and why I was the only one who could help. They never asked directly for money, which somehow made it worse. Instead, they would call to tell me about their problems, painting vivid pictures of their struggles, and then wait for me to offer assistance. The guilt was crushing. How could I say no to the people who had sacrificed everything for my education? How could I explain that my American salary didn't stretch as far as they imagined? How could I tell them that I was barely surviving myself when they saw me as their successful son living the American dream? Gradually, I became the family's unofficial bank. Every month, I found myself sending home between $200 and $400, money I desperately needed for my own survival. I stopped going out with friends. I canceled my gym membership. I bought generic groceries and learned to stretch meals for days. The most painful part was how normal it all became. My family stopped asking if I could help and started asking how much I could send. They made plans that included my financial contribution without consulting me first. They talked about my money as if it were family money, as if my individual financial security was somehow selfish to prioritize. I should have set boundaries from the beginning. I should have explained my actual financial situation clearly and firmly. I should have said no when the requests became unreasonable. But I was trapped by love, guilt, and the fear of disappointing the people who had believed in me when no one else would. The warning signs were everywhere, but I chose to ignore them, hoping that somehow things would get better, that my salary would increase, that their emergencies would decrease, that I would figure out how to be everyone's hero without destroying myself in the process. The first major incident happened during my sister's graduation from art school. She called me crying because she couldn't afford the graduation ceremony fees. $200, she said, and she would miss her own graduation. I transferred the money immediately, then spent the next week eating peanut butter sandwiches because I couldn't afford groceries. 2 months later, Diego called about his job interview. He needed a new suit, he said, and this job could change everything for our family. $300 later, he got the job but was laid off within 6 months. The suit hung in his closet unworn, while I struggled to pay my electric bill. Then came my mother's birthday. She had always dreamed of having a small party with her friends, nothing fancy, just cake and decorations. The whole family contributed, they said, but they were short just $150. Could I help make Mom's dream come true? Of course I could. I always could, even when it meant overdrafting my account and paying $35 in fees. My friends started to notice. Sarah, my closest friend, watched me decline dinner invitations week after week. "You're killing yourself for people who don't even know you're dying," she said one evening when I explained why I couldn't join them for pizza. Her words stung because they were true. My coworker James was more direct. "Dude, you live like a monk and work overtime constantly, but you're always broke. Either you have a serious gambling problem, or you're being financially abused by someone." The phrase financially abused hit me like a physical blow. I had never thought of it that way, but the description felt uncomfortably accurate. The numbers were devastating when I finally calculated them. Over 3 years, I had sent home over $15,000. $15,000 that could have been an emergency fund, a down payment on a car, or investment in my future. Instead, it had disappeared into an endless cycle of family crises that somehow never seemed to end. The breaking point came during a video call with my entire family. They were planning Anna's wedding, excitedly discussing venues, flowers, and catering. Then my father casually mentioned that they were counting on my contribution to make it happen. Not asking, not requesting, but counting on it. As if my financial participation was already decided. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, we figured you could cover the photography and maybe help with the catering. Nothing too crazy, maybe $1,500 total." $1,500. More than my rent. More than I had in my entire savings account. Money I didn't have, for an event I couldn't even attend because I couldn't afford the plane ticket. The final straw came 3 weeks later, during my birthday dinner with the family over video call. I had been looking forward to this moment of connection, a chance to feel celebrated and loved despite the distance. Instead, it became the moment when everything I had been suppressing finally erupted. We were talking about my work, and I mentioned that I had been stressed about money lately. My rent had increased, and I was looking for a second job to make ends meet. The response was immediate and devastating. "But you earn dollars," my uncle Roberto said, laughing as if I had told a joke. "You should be helping us more, not worrying about your own expenses." The words hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, confessing my financial struggles to my family, and their response was to suggest I should be giving them more money. Not sympathy, not concern, not even acknowledgement of my difficulties. Just expectation for more. "You don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "I can barely pay my own rent. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I skip meals to send money home." My mother's face appeared on the screen. "Mijo, we appreciate everything you do, but you have to understand that we're family. We all have to sacrifice for each other." "I am sacrificing." The words exploded out of me. "I'm sacrificing everything. I don't have savings, I don't have a social life, I don't have security, because every month I'm sending you money I don't have." The silence was deafening. For a moment nobody spoke. Then my father's voice, calm and measured. "Marcus, we never forced you to send anything. This is what family does." "No," I said, and I could hear my voice breaking. "Family doesn't drain each other dry. Family doesn't assume someone else's money is their money. Family doesn't guilt someone into financial suicide." I looked at their faces on the screen, saw the shock, the hurt, the confusion. But for the first time in 3 years, I also felt something else, relief. The truth was finally out. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I love you all, but I can't keep destroying my life to fund yours." The next morning, I opened a new savings account and transferred $50 into it. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was the beginning of something new. I wrote down a budget, a real budget, that included my actual expenses and left room for savings and emergency funds. Then I wrote a letter to my family. Not an angry letter, but a clear one. I explained my exact financial situation, down to the dollar. I showed them my monthly expenses, my debt, my complete lack of savings. I told them I loved them, but that I needed to take care of myself first before I could help anyone else. The reaction was swift and painful. My mother cried. My father was angry. Diego accused me of being selfish and forgetting where I came from. Anna said I was abandoning the family when she needed me most for her wedding. But I held firm. I established rules. No more than $50 per month in family assistance, and only for genuine emergencies. Medical bills, yes. Birthday parties, no. I would help with major crises, but I would not fund lifestyle choices or poor financial planning. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family dynamics and financial boundaries. She helped me understand that my guilt was not serving anyone. By enabling my family's financial dependency, I was actually hurting them, preventing them from learning to manage their own resources and solve their own problems. The first month was brutal. I received dozens of calls, texts, and messages, some pleading, some angry, some disappointed. But I stuck to my boundaries. When Anna called about wedding expenses, I offered to help her create a budget instead of sending money. When Diego needed car repairs, I sent him information about low-cost mechanics instead of a check. Slowly, things began to change. My family started solving problems they had previously brought to me. Anna got a part-time job to save for her wedding. Diego learned to negotiate payment plans for his expenses. My parents began setting aside small amounts each month for household emergencies. 6 months after the birthday dinner confrontation, my family dynamics had transformed completely. Anna's wedding was beautiful, smaller than originally planned, but filled with genuine joy rather than financial stress. She had saved for months, and the celebration felt more meaningful because it was truly theirs. Diego had developed actual financial skills. He started a small side business selling handmade crafts online, something he had always been good at, but never pursued because he could rely on family bailouts. His income wasn't huge, but it was steady and it was his. My parents were the biggest surprise. They started a vegetable garden and began selling excess produce at the local market. It wasn't about the money, my mother explained during one of our calls. It was about feeling capable and independent again. They had forgotten how good it felt to solve their own problems. My relationship with my family became healthier and more honest. We talked about money openly now, without shame or manipulation. When they had genuine emergencies, I could help without resentment because I wasn't already stretched to my breaking point. When they had wants rather than needs, they didn't expect me to provide them. I had saved over $2,000 by the end of the year. I bought a plane ticket and visited home for the first time in 3 years. The visit was different this time. I wasn't arriving as the family's financial savior, but as a son, a brother, a person with his own life and struggles and dreams. Today, I live in a small apartment that I can afford comfortably. I have an emergency fund, a retirement account, and enough left over each month to actually enjoy life. My family has learned to thrive independently, and our relationships are stronger because they're based on love rather than financial obligation. The hardest lesson I learned was that helping someone doesn't always mean giving them what they ask for. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable dependency and instead encourage growth and self-reliance. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, know that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't save someone else's financial life by destroying your own. Your family's love for you shouldn't be conditional on your bank account. Your worth isn't measured by how much you can give. And your dreams and financial security matter just as much as anyone else's. The conversation isn't over. We're still learning, still growing, still figuring out how to be a family that supports each other without sacrificing individual well-being. But we're doing it together now as equals, and that makes all the difference.